Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer. I am with CUGC HQ, and I am happy to welcome you all to our first CUGC Connect for 2018. And we'll be hearing from NVIDIA today about their new bundle solution with Citrix and Nutanix. Before we get into that, just for anyone who's new to CUGC, I'd like to encourage you to go out to our website, mycugc.org, and take a look. You'll see that we have over 60 local user groups around the world and over 17,000 members worldwide. So surely there is a meeting happening in your neck of the woods somewhere. So go out there, check out our events calendar, find a local meeting, get plugged in, and also check out everything else we have. We have forums, blogs, and more webinars. Lots of stuff for you guys. All right, so moderating for us today is Sam Jacobs. He is a CTP and he is the Director of Technology at IPM. You can find him on Twitter at WiGuru. Did I pronounce that right, Sam?
WI Guru.
WI Guru. Sam's also a winner of our CUGC Award for 2017 for the best user share. He did a user share last year on building a XenApp, hold on, let me find it, XenApp real-time session monitoring dashboard. I am going to put that link to that webinar in the chat for you if you're curious. You can go and watch the recording. But wanted to recognize Sam for that. He does a lot for us at CUGC. So if you want to say hello really quickly, Sam.
Hi, this is Sam. Yes, I like to assist moderating the webinars for CUGC, and if you're not already a member, I would highly suggest that you do so. And that's pretty much it. I will be monitoring the questions for Jared for NVIDIA, and if it's something that I think that we should break, I'll interrupt Jared, but we'll try to hold most of the questions for the end of the session.
All right, thank you. All right, presenting for us today from NVIDIA is Jared Cowart. He is the Technical Product Manager at NVIDIA Grid. You can also find him on Twitter at I'm going to say ZenJCC. How about that? Jared has been with NVIDIA for 6 years, and he came over from Citrix to work on solutions. So without taking up too much more time, Jared, I'll let you take it away, and I will send you the screen right now.
Fantastic. Well, Stephanie, it's great to be back here. It's so cool. I get to be on the first CUGC event of the year. So what a fantastic opportunity. So we did a lot of these last year, and we had just such great attendance. So it really has been fantastic for us to get better connected with the community. I actually happen to run our NGCA program, which is our NVIDIA Grid Community Advisors program. So it's similar to the CTP program. And it's just great to be a part of that and be so close to the community. We really appreciate the feedback. It really matters. You know, me working on the product management side of the fence now, the type of feedback we get from these presentations, the people reaching out to me via Twitter, you know, I have so many stories of that feedback going right into the product. You know, please hit me up on Twitter, provide feedback or questions on the webinar, and you know, we definitely appreciate the feedback, and NVIDIA loves our customers and appreciates what you guys bring to the community as a whole. So today what we're here to talk about is some neat things we announced at Citrix Summit. For those of you who are customers, maybe you don't know what Citrix Summit is. Citrix Summit is the partner version of kind of Citrix Synergy, and just a fantastic event. There's a couple of public things that we announced, and so really quick, few things that I want to do is just kind of recap Summit. There'll be some new Citrix-Ready videos that we shot with Citrix-Ready at Summit. So we've got kind of an executive summary video coming out with John Finelli that will go over the Citrix Nutanix bundle that we now are putting together. We also did a live preview that you guys could actually, partners could come up to the booth and they could do the motion themselves. We announced an official tech preview, so we've got a handful of customers, a good handful of customers that are in this tech preview. that are testing Zen Server with Zen Motion and NVIDIA vGPU. So that release will be coming out sometime within the next few months for production. But right now we've got customers that are testing that, and really exciting, great feature that has been asked for since the days I joined NVIDIA. The next thing that we'll go into, which is really what the core webinar is about, is the Citrix-Ready bundle. So these bundles are fantastic. What this means is you've got kind of a three-way relationship where everybody is validating solutions. They're making sure that there's reference material, documentation, all kinds of great stuff that makes it easier for customers and partners to acquire these solutions. So definitely take a look at the Citrix-Ready videos. There'll be some documentation and some things published around the Citrix-Ready bundle with Nutanix and NVIDIA. And then if you get a chance, take a look at some of the videos and things that are online around there as a Motion vGPU preview, and a lot of good stuff there. Let's dive right in. Before we get going too much into this, what I wanted to do is initially just kind of talk about what we see going on in the industry. When I joined NVIDIA, 6 or 7 years ago to kind of help the NVIDIA Grid solution launch, we had a handful of people that needed graphics within the virtual desktops. And those were mostly your CAD, CAM, engineering, people designing buildings, doing things of that nature were kind of the go-to target customer. What we see now is a big kind of shift taking place. And over the last 5 years or so, we've seen a doubling of the applications that are accelerated by graphics. This is everything from Office, your latest versions of Office, to every browser now has the ability to be accelerated by GPUs. So GPUs are becoming more prominent within virtual desktop deployments and even virtual application deployments. A couple of other points here is 60% of all enterprises work with at least one application that is dependent on graphics acceleration, and this may be simply a browser. A lot of our HR applications and or internal training that we need to take is video delivered, and consuming that over a virtual desktop without a graphics can be an interesting experience. But with the GPU, it becomes native-like. Another thing that's really important to the relationship that we have with Nutanix and Citrix is reducing this low-level infrastructure management. 70% of the time admin spend is on low-level administration. And that can be things from configuring storage to virtual machines, these types of things. And I think one of the things that excites us at NVIDIA with working with Nutanix is it simplifies that. It makes that so much more simple and less time has to be focused on that. And so we're excited to reduce that and make that easier for everybody. Another interesting figure that we got out of Gartner here is 80% of IT budget is just spent on ultimately keeping the lights on. So whatever we can do to optimize keeping those lights on, with simplifying our infrastructure, is better here. So let's dive a little bit into kind of the use case, the challenge of what we're seeing here is everybody knows, we've migrated from Windows 95 to Windows 7, and nowadays we're seeing a big increase in Windows 10 being deployed. There's a cool statistic on this slide, and this is 32% increase in GPU consumption compared to Windows 7 with moving into Windows 10. And even as we get into the fall updates and the different versions of Windows 10, those become more graphical and have more dependencies on GPUs. And so having the ability to have a GPU within a virtual desktop is becoming more of a requirement than it would be in your Windows 7. So we're definitely seeing an uptick there in that need, and so thus working with some of the best solutions in the industry to make sure that we can make that more obtainable for more and more customers. So what we see, and maybe you've seen some slides in the past where we talk about task users, knowledge users, and kind of engineers, designers. We've kind of stopped that, and we're actually kind of classifying this now into really two use cases. What we see now is really a knowledge business worker. Your productivity applications, maybe remote access, they're looking for a native experience, they want to increase their collaborative capabilities, and then our high-end designers, right? So we've really got two use cases that we're starting to see. Task users' needs are increasing more to be knowledge user type levels. And so this is another shift that we're starting to see within our customers that's pretty significant. So you've got kind of a product that we would, that I'll talk about here in a minute, that's associated for the knowledge business worker, and then we've got a higher end product for those engineers, architects, kind of designers and it's a solution for all. So if you're not familiar with, you know, the NVIDIA Grid GPU solution, if we look on our left-hand side, this is our traditional stack. Traditional stack is we've got a server, we've got a hypervisor, we've got our apps, virtual machines, and then we deliver those to our end users. On the right-hand side, we've got where we would play with the NVIDIA solution. And in this case, we've got a server that's running a compliant, it's on our hardware compatibility list to support a Tesla, and we have hundreds of servers now that are supported with Tesla GPUs. In this case, we've got a hypervisor. We're going to talk about Acropolis here in a minute, so I put Acropolis in here. We have a component that we install in the hypervisor. That's what we call our NVIDIA Virtual GPU Manager. It's virtualization software. We then can create these virtual GPUs, and we can go all the way up to 24 to 1 from a consolidation perspective of those virtual GPUs. We assign those to virtual machine. We have the NVIDIA graphics drivers, and these are the same drivers that maybe you're running on your workstations at your business today, or maybe you're even running on your gaming machine at home, but those same NVIDIA graphic drivers would run in that virtual machine. And then we can layer on top of that Citrix XenApp and desktop for either delivering applications and or desktops. But this is kind of the solution in a nutshell, just to kind of show you here, you know, how this plays out. So if we break this down into that knowledge user and that kind of designer, creative, higher end user, we really have two or three kind of software products that ride on top of that Tesla GPU. So on the left-hand side here, we've got our knowledge users, and knowledge users nowadays are, you know, probably running office productivity type applications, probably browsers, videos. More and more people are leveraging Photoshop for editing, you know, photos, or maybe Adobe type suite. All of these applications can benefit from a virtual GPU. And so we've got the capability in a Zen desktop play to deliver our software Grid Virtual PC license there. And that has the ability to you know, enhance all of those applications. In a XenApp deployment, we have the ability to run the Grid Virtual Application solution there for delivering those applications out via XenApp. On the higher end side, we've actually rebranded this. You may have known this as Virtual Workstation in the past. What we've done is we've actually given this product the Quadro moniker. The Quadro is our professional graphics line. When we announced our Pascal series boards, it now has the ability for every profile to have the ability to run compute capabilities, and it really partners well with our existing Quadro products. So we actually gave it the Quadro moniker now. So this is the Quadro Virtual Data Center workstation solution. And this is for those higher end use cases. So your AutoCAD, your SolidWorks, you know, CATIA, Revit. Higher end use cases will fall under the solution. So it means that across the board, we can deal from everything from performance to scalability, from that knowledge user all the way up to the highest end designer. From a hardware perspective, on the right-hand side of the screen here, we really have three products that align with the solution that we're going to talk about today, which is this bundle. And that's the M10, the M60, and the P40. And you see here, it really is classified into two categories. So a density option, which pairs perfectly with those knowledge users. And this gives us up to 64 virtual GPU instances. So we could support 64 virtual machines with eGPU, you know, per card. And we could run up to 2 cards in a host typically. So nowadays, we've got the density question kind of challenge addressed. You know, we can support up to 120 plus users on a host nowadays, which is just fantastic. We've worked real hard at being able to get those levels of density. When we get into the higher end use, we have now the M60 and the P40, and these would be our boards that would pair nicely with a Quadro kind of optimized experience in that professional graphics kind of use case. And these have got different levels of density. And if you look at the slide there, you can kind of see the density and the kind of the CUDA cores and the frame buffer and the different stats on this. This is all available on our website there. We do also have a couple of other solutions that are supported, and those are for blades. Right now, we don't have a blade solution necessarily as a part of this bundle, but outside of this bundle, we do now support blades very well as well. So how does this look with AHV? Like I mentioned, one of the things that we really highlighted at the Citrix Summit show was that now we've had some Acropolis hypervisor support in the past, but it was typically pass-through. I had to take the whole GPU and give the whole GPU to a virtual machine. And I didn't have the ability to run, you know, those 64 kind of carved up virtual GPUs in the Acropolis solution. So with our 5.0 release, we now are supporting vGPU with Acropolis, which we're super excited to support. So now we've got that Acropolis support. We've got obviously Citrix support, and thus kind of the bundle that we're pulling together here. So this bundle that we worked on together, it's a three-way solution. So it's Nutanix, Citrix, but it's not just the initial solutions. It's the Nutanix Cloud, it's the Citrix Cloud. So if we're leveraging maybe our control plane in the cloud, that control plane can communicate back down to a Nutanix infrastructure that's running virtual GPU, integrated right into Studio for just auto provisioning those desktops, really slick. But it gives you the ability to use that same control plane to manage, you know, different desktops that are in the cloud or on premise, and all different types of white papers and things that'll be involved in that solution. But this was the big announcement that we had at Citrix Summit, and that you'll see more and more coming from industry and different webinars and presentations in the future here. So if we break this thing down into what are the actual bits and pieces of the overall solution, it comes down into the Nutanix Enterprise kind of Cloud OS. It breaks down into the Citrix Cloud Synapse and Desktop kind of service, and then it breaks into the NVIDIA virtual GPU product. So that's the virtual PC, virtual apps, and the Quadro virtual data center solution there. That ultimately combines all of these solutions to accelerate, you know, a very performant desktop application experience. And the joint solution is going to have reference architectures, reference material, so it makes it super simple, super easy to work with, kind of moving forward. So as we start powering kind of our modern applications, it's critical that we start thinking about adding virtual GPUs. And we also start seeing more and more Nutanix playing with a hyper-converged kind of platform here. And some of the goals that we had here throughout this offering is really to deliver just a fantastic experience at scale to any users. And it's really at scale that's important. One of the things that we appreciate from an NVIDIA perspective of the Nutanix solution is that you can start simple. You can start with just 3 nodes, and you can scale all the way to thousands without having to go in and re-architect things. I'm going to show you a little bit later on of, you know, some of the neat things Nutanix has done within Prism to make the scalability easy, to know when you should be adding another node, to know exactly how much GPU is being used. But, you know, the nice thing is ability to start small and scale here, really critical. We needed to make sure that, you know, Windows 10 performance requirements are being addressed, and that we have the host and the infrastructure to be able to do that for quality experience. And one of the critical things is that we've got to slash our total cost of ownership. You know, if we look at traditional old school kind of virtual desktop, when we had storage area networks and all of these things, you know, the costs were just extremely high. And now with a hyper-converged solution, you know, we're seeing as little as, or as much as 60%, you know, reduction within the overall. I've got some customers here, some reference customers that we'll talk about, you know, towards the end of the presentation, and kind of mention them here. Cornerstone's one that we'll focus on a little bit. But you know, real world people that are using this solution here today. So the top benefits, we really I kind of broke this down into 3 different kind of solutions with this solution. It really comes down to cost-effective deployment for these high-quality desktops within minutes. It's got to be minutes nowadays. We're in a society of users expecting their desktop quick, and we need to be able to do that. And this is what the solution is enabling us. We need to have, you know, seamless real-time collaboration amongst users from any device, anywhere, any location. I think the Citrix mantra that we've seen, and this is critical for the NVIDIA vGPU play, and even internally how we work nowadays at NVIDIA. You know, we demand things now, and then we need to have centralized data, increased security management and ease. But these are main goals that even NVIDIA IT has, and this solution is really helping to meet all those different goals here. So one of the things that's important to me, kind of to my heart here, is you know, end-to-end monitoring. I happen to manage the Grid SDK And this grid SDK is something that we've done that's really important. If you look back a couple of years ago, when we were trying to monitor virtual GPUs, initially we were monitoring the physical GPU. So if two users were on that physical GPU and we were monitoring one user, we could actually see what the other user was doing, and it didn't really give us the granularity of telling us exactly what that user needed. And so we spent a huge amount of effort to create a software development kit that gives us the ability now to monitor very granularly on a guest level. So we can now get down to monitoring the frame buffer utilization, the GPU overall utilization, encoder, decoder, and even get into, with some of our third-party monitoring tools, application level monitoring to tell you exactly what application is consuming which portion of the GPU, which process, and then we can generalize those in different reporting mechanisms, making sure that host level data is there so that we can feed that data back into things like Prism. And so I help manage this the software development kit, and we worked really hard with Nutanix to make sure that this type of data, not every aspect of it, but a lot of this type of data is actually within the Prism solution. So what I wanted to do is show you what they're actually putting within Prism to kind of show you how this comes out here, and it looks pretty slick. So this is Acropolis. What I've essentially done here is I've right-clicked on a virtual machine, and I'm just saying add a virtual GPU to this VM or add a GPU. And now I can choose here to add a vGPU or a pass-through. I can choose what license, if it's a virtual workstation or Quadro workstation, or if it's a virtual apps or virtual PC. Notice down below, though, here, they're doing some calculations for you, which is pretty slick. It actually tells me, all right, if I select this profile, I currently have 7 VMs assigned. Here's my slice, so I've got 1 that could be assigned still. So it gives me decision-making capability that helps me to understand, overall what's in use, but really cool capabilities. But this is what it looks like when you right-click on a machine and add it. Now, this, of course, integrates all the way in through Studio as well. So if you connect it up to Nutanix, block infrastructure or cluster, we can now integrate right into this and add virtual machines with these GPUs directly from that console as well. And this is integrated into Prism and Prism Central. This difference between the two is Prism is more for a single cluster. Prism Central is for managing multiple of the Nutanix cluster nodes there. So some other stuff that we've done here is this is actually looking at an overall infrastructure. So I've got, in this case, it's a small cluster, but I'm looking at all the virtual machines that are within this cluster, and it's telling me the current GPU utilization, current frame buffer utilization. So if I happen to see, a user that's exceedingly low or exceedingly high, maybe I could back them off of the profile size that they need, or I could increase the size that they need, depending. But again, all this data right in there, so we have everything from looking at the overall summary of the M10 GPU here, or granularly into the virtual machines. But this isn't a half-baked solution. So the cool thing is that this is available today, baked right into the overall platform. So here's physical data, right? So not only are they monitoring the data around kind of virtual GPUs, but we're also monitoring the physical GPUs. So in this cluster here, we have 10 GPUs deployed, and you can see every GPU and what's allocated between those. So you can see here the overall GPU utilization of that physical GPU, the frame buffer utilization. So we probably don't want to put more users across here. And then we can see here that that GPU, about 5 or 6 down, is in pass-through mode, which is oftentimes being used for compute or maybe a machine learning, some of the artificial intelligence type workloads is what we're starting to see as well, with some people that may just pull a whole GPU out and use that for maybe engineers or developers that are working on those types of use cases. We're starting to see some use cases where we see desktops by day, machine learning, artificial intelligence by evening, and the Nutanix play just a great job here with that. One of the things I don't have a slide on that I'd like to mention really quick is the deployment of the virtual GPU manager. If you've ever deployed NVIDIA vGPU, you know that there's a virtual GPU manager that has to be installed within the actual hypervisor. So within VMware, that's a bib install, right? So we have to go and we have to SSH into that host, we have to enable SSH, then we have to SFTP a bib up, and then we have to run a command line to install that and reboot the host. One of the things that Nutanix has done really well is it's a simple script that they deploy now. And that script now goes and checks all the Nutanix nodes for GPUs. If it sees that there's a GPU there, it goes and deploys that virtual GPU manager seamless to the admin. Same thing works for updating. So very, very simple, one command line, push go, and it pushes to all the nodes and makes that process extremely simple, extremely quick for managing those different components. But didn't have a slide for it, but wanted to mention it because it's just another one of those huge things that saves time, enables us to deploy and get these things online even faster. So just one more slide kind of here to show you kind of the physical. We've got some historical data here as well, so we can actually get granular on the overall utilization. We can look for trends, things that are taking place with our environment. You know, again, bake right into the solution. We're excited that that more people are starting to add this data. What we find is that our SDK is being really well received. A lot of customers really love the granularity that we can get into, monitoring things down to, app level and such. But we've been super excited about this and, the different things that obviously Nutanix is integrating here. So consolidating all workloads, as you can see here, now in the past, maybe you weren't able to deal with high-end graphics or those graphical workstations. Now with the Nutanix kind of play here, we can go all across the board, and we can now handle all the different use cases on one overall kind of ready bundle. So I'm super excited. So I'm not obviously the best Nutanix guy in the world, but if you didn't know, I wanted to kind of give you an idea of how the Nutanix stacks, where the NVIDIA piece fits in, where the Citrix piece fits in, and kind of an overall kind of message of this bundle. So really quick, I'm just going to talk about the different solutions. I'll do my best, and if you have any questions, we'll begin here. If you didn't know, Acropolis is Nutanix's hypervisor. So Acropolis is the free hypervisor that Nutanix gives you the option to deploy. This is a turnkey platform, really simple to deploy. And they've got that overall kind of storage, networking, virtualization, compute all in one kind of framework. Now, they have a management utility engine. I mentioned earlier Prism Central, and this Prism is essentially the tool that you would log into to manage everything from desktops to virtual machines to storage to networking. Everything's within that Prism kind of framework. Some of the stuff that Nutanix has lightly talked about, and I'm not going to go into tons of detail here, but the Xi Cloud Services. These are cloud services where Nutanix is going to help to connect into the Citrix Cloud Services, their own cloud service, third party, with the ability to kind of expand your on-premise infrastructure to essentially cloud. So we're excited to see what's coming here. I wanted to lightly talk about it, but we're not going to go into tons of details in regards to that. But this kind of makes up what we feel is kind of the Nutanix platform here. If we dive a little deeper into kind of where do we play from an NVIDIA Citrix perspective here, you can see here we've kind of got what's representative of a Nutanix block. And within this, we've got our networking kind of sitting at the base. We've got our storage, security. We've got our NVIDIA server with kind of GPUs in there. Above that, we've got our Acropolis hypervisor and our vGPU software that Nutanix is handling the deployment of. We've got the Nutanix app automation orchestration, the multi-cloud stuff, that's all coming through Prism, and then we're ultimately delivering an app and desktop here. You can see here, it's all consolidated into one single appliance, simple, easy to use for the end users and admins, so that not each and every one of those components have to ultimately be deployed and managed. So if we look here just at the overall kind of Nutanix play, Nutanix is typically deployed in threes. That way we've got the ability to kind of do enterprise-grade distributed storage across these. We've got the native virtualization, which is the Acropolis, DR, data protection, all those different components. This isn't, a solution that is not baked by any means. This has been out for quite some time. We just haven't had the full NVIDIA stack in there yet. And kind of how we integrate here, if we look and why we were excited to work with Nutanix is that, this is the most popular hyper-converged solution in the market. This powers literally every application. They've got partners with a lot of the application ISP vendors that we work with as well. And the scalability is unlimited, and it's flexible and simple. So really, how this kind of all plays out with the overall story here is that we've got that Nutanix, NVIDIA, AHV, stack, so with the Prism component, working with Acropolis in this case, but it's important that we know not everybody's on Acropolis yet, but that Prism has the ability to manage other supported virtual GPU hypervisors here, which would be, VMware in this case, or Citrix End Server. So ultimately a complete foundation that gives you the ability to manage maybe your existing infrastructure and migrate into Acropolis, or your existing infrastructure migrate into the cloud, or maybe you're acquiring GPU resources from Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, any of those services that they're helping partner with as well. So if you're not familiar with AHV, I wanted to dive a little bit into this, but this is Nutanix's kind of home-built, built-in, high-performance hypervisor. We've seen fantastic benchmarking and performance with it. This is integrated all the way into the Prism stack, so it's complete virtualization management, monitoring like you saw. It's hardened, it's license-free, and there's no cost with this solution. So, again, it reduces the overall budget on a deployment. It saves room to add, the GPUs or different components that you may need in this. But ultimately, the native virtualization is reducing the complexity and the overall budget requirements. So just a super exciting solution that we have here. So if we start looking at this bundle, again, some of our goals, some of the things we've heard from our customers that are maybe taking advantage of this already, is it's about delivering a great experience at any scale. And any scale is really critical. What we see is that typically customers start with a handful of GPUs, test out some use cases, but then they start wanting to scale. With the Nutanix solution and the Citrix-Ready solution, now it's simply adding in additional nodes and scaling. So it's really easy to start small and scale to tens of thousands of users. The solution's validated, right? End-to-end. Validated so that it's simple, easier to deploy. Somebody somewhere threw an 8x number out there, but I don't know exactly where the number comes from, but I can tell you that I've deployed it and it is much faster and much simpler than any other solution out there. And then ultimately reducing the total cost of ownership. And more than anything, the thing that I appreciate is putting it in an enabling pay-as-you-grow type model. So you don't have to do everything all up front, and you can grow into it as you need to add scalability there. And when you add that, you're adding in the storage capacity, the network capacity, so you're not having to expand storage infrastructure and those types of things. So some of the benefits here that we're really, overall pretty excited about here is that with the Nutanix kind of supported stack here, it doesn't necessarily have to be Acropolis. The solution and the validated kind of design here enables for any of the solutions. So we can run all supported hypervisors for you, and all supported hypervisors nowadays. The three main hypervisors that are supported are, vSphere, End Server, and AHV. So the stack supports all of those. So predictable performance and scalability grow as you choose and grow as you need for any of your end user computing. And offering a simplified deployment, single instance, initial configurations and updates. Biggest thing is updates, right? You can really centralize updating your NVIDIA components, your Citrix components simply. Some of the differentiators in this bundle that are really cool. So the Citrix bundle eliminates hypervisor costs altogether. So you can choose AHV or Zen server, no cost for either one of those hypervisors. So it gives you more choices. Those of you who maybe didn't like the Zen server option, now you have the AHV solution still at no cost. The other key differentiator here is that Nutanix is integrating the management of the Citrix Cloud. So you've got the Citrix Cloud for Zen Apps and Desktop right into Prism. So within Prism, you've got integration capabilities there. You've also got the ability now to run maybe on-premise apps, desktops, or cloud-based, leveraging the Citrix NVIDIA stack there. We believe that we're providing the ultimate experience for compute and graphics. One of the things I think you'll see this year is that we'll start talking a lot more about compute, desktop by day, compute by night. we are seeing more users that are starting to run machine learning, artificial intelligence training on their virtualization environments in the evening. And Nutanix is working really hard to optimize that space. One of the other things with the latest version of Citrix that was released was now the ability within the Citrix NVIDIA solution to now do H.265 encoding. So H.265 encoding, especially in your lower bandwidth type deployments, enables you to reduce or consume less bandwidth and provide an even better graphical experience for your users. So definitely keep an eye on some of the things that are happening in that H.264 space. Really good things there. But all in all, you're looking at the overall kind of stack here and what the key differentiators are here. So I wanted to kind of end this with talking about Cornerstone Home Lending. So this is a partner that Citrix, Nutanix, NVIDIA all worked on together. They have hundreds of branches. They really needed to centralize data, streamline desktop deployment. There's thousands of employees, and they chose to go with the NVIDIA Nutanix Citrix stack here for a couple of reasons. Increase the overall quality and performance experience for applications. And most of these applications in this case were Office and video type applications. So it gave them that ability to provide a local-like experience with virtual desktop. Some of the challenges that they had is they needed to lower latency for kind of modern business applications, internal applications for lending and things. And then also dealing with, streaming video, social media. Those things are getting pretty critical nowadays. And then really, they do a really good job at measuring user acceptance and user satisfaction. And that was one of the main goals in this project, was to keep that user acceptance, user satisfaction high. And the solution was able to provide that for them. So really exciting customer that we have jointly. There's others that will have some white papers and some case studies that are out. So definitely kind of keep an eye out for those types of things as they get going. And definitely keep an eye out for some of the ready documentation around kind of deployment guides, how you purchase the solution, and how you would work with that. So I think we can open up for some questions if we have a few of them. We kept this kind of short and sweet.
Wow, that was a lot of information, Jared. I'll try to ask only the questions that you haven't already answered. Okay. Yeah, Citrix and Nutanix announced an instant-on bundle. Is this bundle just adding NVIDIA cards to that, or is this a totally different appliance solution?
So NVIDIA cards will be added to the instant-on bundle as well. So this is a part of that bundle that'll be an option. So if you're looking for the instant-on bundle with NVIDIA graphics or whatever, this will be a part of that overall solution. From my
so this is the same bundle.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Same bundle.
Same bundle. Okay. If you're running Acropolis Prism, do you still need an NVIDIA license server?
You do. So there still would be an NVIDIA licensing server that would be needed for the virtual machines to check out the appropriate license. So that can run on any existing, Windows Server VM, Windows 10 VM, and that is very similar to like the Citrix licensing server. And that effectively, as the virtual machines boot up, they would go and check out their appropriate virtual PC, virtual workstation license as users would consume that.
Right. So now you can carve up, vGPUs per machine. Can you also carve up a vGPU for published desktops as well?
So you can. Typically, we don't advise it. If for some reason you had a P40, that may make some sense to carve up just because that's such a beast of a GPU. But say, for instance, in like an M10 scenario, oftentimes what we'll see customers do is they'll put 2 M10s or 1 M10 in a host. A lot of the times for running like XenApp, you would just run what we would kind of classify as the 8A profile. And 8A is essentially the full GPU profile. And so we give the entire GPU to that XenApp virtual machine, due in part for a couple of reasons. XenApp as a whole is frame buffer limited. So as soon as the limit of frame buffer has essentially been reached, it's not going to accept connections anymore, and it would move to the next, XenApp host. So you want to get as much frame buffer into the XenApp virtual machines as possible. And so in regards to like an M10, that would give us 4, Windows 2016 server virtual machines with XenApp, each with 8 gigs of frame buffer, which would support around, 20 to 30 users or so delivering XenApp applications. So
right. And
there's some use cases where there might be a small application where you can carve it up more, but for the most part, we see people in XenApp giving it the entire GPU.
Right. And that's the same for Zen desktops as well, not just XenApp.
Yeah, Zen Desktop, no. With Zen Desktop, you can actually give them a 512 meg frame buffer. Zen Desktop works a little differently. VDI works a little differently in regards to if it runs out of frame buffer. If it runs out of frame buffer, it'll start paging out to system memory. It can impact performance, so you want to size correctly. But it doesn't have as much of a monumental, like, I've reached my frame buffer limit, I'm going to not allow connections anymore from a VDI perspective. But VDI, you really want to kind of look at the connecting resolution and kind of size. We see nowadays with Windows 10, the 1 gig profile being kind of a happy medium, perfect place for kind of every user.
Mm-hmm. Now, is the licensing per user session or per machine? And how is that enforced? Is there an honor system, or how is that enforced?
So it's per concurrent user is how it works. So it's a CPU type model. We do have a 10% overage in the system, similar to what Citrix would have. So you've got a buffer that would be in place. So as users log in, they're going to consume those licenses as things go there. To give you an idea for cost, including the board, so if we take the cost of the actual Tesla GPU, and we take the cost of like a virtual PC license, if we amortize that over a period of 3 years, it winds up being about $6 a day for a virtual PC user to have a graphical enhanced experience. So the marketing's gone wild in me says a cup of coffee a day to have a better graphical experience is what some marketing person went crazy with, but that's the cost roughly.
And can drivers be added without power cycling the hypervisor, or you have to reboot them?
So drivers in the virtual GPU manager does require a power cycle, so that does require one in regards to doing that.
Okay. What models of Nutanix server are all models of Nutanix server supported, or only certain ones?
So only certain ones. Nutanix has 2 platforms that are supported. I think there's a third coming, but there's 2 platforms right now that support anything from the M10, the M60, and the P40. I'm not sure exactly what those model numbers are. If there's a Nutanix person on the call, please throw it in chat.
Anybody from Nutanix?
Where's Keys when you need him?
Somebody's asking about, is it only the Nutanix hardware, or what about the Dell partnership that they have?
So as long as that Dell hardware, so yeah, you're exactly correct in that question. So Nutanix's HCL is interesting, and there is absolutely Dell hardware that is supported within the Nutanix ecosystem and for AHV. As long as that is supported of a grid of a Tesla board, then that would be supported within the solution as well. I highly recommend taking a look at Nutanix's HCL because they've got their own platforms, but then they have third-party platforms as well that support GPUs. So it's kind of a broad ecosystem of the different partners that they would work with in regards to that hardware.
Okay, cool. Are there any other questions that Jared has not yet answered? I think that's pretty much it. How would NVIDIA work as far as the profile that would need to be assigned? I'm not quite sure.
Do we know what profile? think they're probably asking about the NVIDIA vGPU profile. So within a couple things about that. So within Studio, you essentially select a pool of desktops that you're going to create, and you assign the profile that you want for that, 50 desktops. That would go down to the Nutanix box or hypervisor Prism, and it would deploy those 50 machines with that profile. If you needed to change a user, increase the profile size, you can then go to the virtual machine within Prism and increase that or decrease that based on that user's need. Oftentimes people will create different pools of different user profile types within kind of Studio. That's how that would kind of play out. But lots of flexibility ultimately in how you wanted to deal with that or manage that.
All right. It's asking the specific on, for example, Zen Desktop Server 2016, and you had, let's say, 10 to 15 user sessions. How would the profile need to be assigned?
Okay, so I think they're talking about like an RDSH Zen app. With it being 2016, that's definitely falling into the Zen app type deployment.
Yep.
So basically, the like I was mentioning earlier, the limiting factor of Zen app is frame buffer. So in regards to frame buffer utilization, what I typically will do to kind of determine scale, determine what profile size, is I'll initially assign the whole 8 gig profile to the virtual machine. Once I've done that, then I start watching frame buffer consumption as users are connecting. Depending upon what users are doing or the resolution size of their connecting monitor, they can consume different amounts of frame buffer. Now, it doesn't scale linearly. So if the first user connects in on a 4K monitor or something, they may be consuming, 300-400 megabytes of frame buffer. The next user, same monitor size, is probably going to only consume 3/4 of that. So there's some optimization at that scale. The easiest way to handle RDSH 2016 type deployments is benchmark it. You've got to understand where your users are connecting from, kind of monitor size, to get kind of an idea. Then that can give you an understanding of your scalability per Zen app VM with the GPU, and then you could adjust accordingly of what size profile that you have. I would say about 90% of the users that I work with that are deploying Zen app with GPUs are using the full GPU as the size of a profile, and that's just the part that it's easier to handle the granularity of how many users they want to get on there, though.
How many NVIDIA licenses are used when pass-through is being used, if any?
So when pass-through is used, there's the workstation license is consumed. When the pass-through goes to a Zen app virtual machine, the apps license is used. Okay.
And the last question here that I have so far is, we have Acropolis VMware Zen Server. What about Hyper-V? Is that on the roadmap?
Well, so Hyper-V today, we can actually support some functionality. So we have VDI support with Hyper-V. So that's a pass-through, effectively. So in a Hyper-V deployment, we have a good amount of customers that are using Hyper-V, doing Zen app workloads on it, passing a GPU through to the Zen app virtual machine, and having great experience for their end users. Or high-end users, CAD/CAM type users that are passing the whole GPU through to that virtual machine and having a great experience. Where we lack with Hyper-V right now is the virtual GPU functionality where I can actually carve GPU up. We're working with Microsoft. We're not making any announcements today in regards to timeframes and or any of that type of stuff. I can, wholeheartedly assume that, it will come, but from a date and time frame, I don't have any answer specifics there. Right. Now, the other thing that can be leveraged with Hyper-V is potentially remote effects. So you could assign a GPU and do, your kind of VMware VSTA kind of shimming type model with remote effects, but I don't know of a lot of people who are doing that today. Most of the Hyper-V customers are doing some form of pass-through to a VDI or pass-through to a Zen app server, and that does work and it's supported today.
Got it. Are there any alerts that are sent to maybe administrators when the solution is nearing capacity so they can maybe increase their license?
Yeah, so that depends on the management monitoring vendor. So I'm not 100% sure within Prism of what alerts they have in place. I know that you can set some of those up. I do know we have some third-party management utilities. If I go back here on my deck here, I had a slide where I talked about the management, and I'll leave this up for a second. Not all of these guys are fully integrated into AHV yet, but if you look here in the lower right, these are guys we're working pretty closely with. So Citrix Director has got some support, within Director. If you're leveraging VMware as your hypervisor and you're using VROPS as your management monitoring, VROPS has got the ability to have alerts, and we have a plugin that goes right into VROPS that we actually developed. Your Lakeside, Liquidware, EG Innovations, Control Ups. You have some functionality with even Uber agents and Nutanix. All of those different management monitoring can ride on top of the stack, and they have different levels of alerting and notification capabilities.
Cool. Okay, there are no other questions. I think we'll hand it back to Stephanie and give you part of your day back. Thanks, Jared.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you.
All right, let me grab the screen really quickly. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right, sometimes GoToWebinar plays tricks with me. Just want to thank you guys. It was a great presentation. Like Sam said, there's a lot of information, Jared. So I think there'll be definitely more ongoing discussion. I have put a link in the chat window for everyone to the forum thread for this webinar. So if you do have more questions or you want to talk about it, feel free to type them in there. I'll make sure that Jared gets the information if there's more questions and get you some answers. Also, I put a link in the chat window to our survey. It's very short, it's anonymous, and we just love to get your feedback, and it helps us plan our future webinars for CUGC as well as other content on the site. Finally, I know some of you may have opted in to potentially win a $100 Amazon gift card courtesy of NVIDIA and Nutanix, and that winner will be selected after the webinar. And we will announce the winner on Twitter and at mycugc.org. So be sure to follow us on Twitter at mycugc. And finally, again, want to encourage you to go out to mycugc.org and find your local group, go to a meeting, find a webinar, another webinar, check our calendar, and start talking in the forums. We love to see all that activity out there. So thanks again. Yeah.
This is Sam. So I know that the session is being recorded and it will be available on my CUGC. Will the deck also be available, the PowerPoint deck? Jared, are you making that available to attendees?
Yes, that'll be available.
Okay,
I think Stephanie already has a copy of it, so she's just got to get it downloaded and then make that public.
Great.
Yep, I'll post that in the forum. So all of you, sorry.
Has all the content. I reordered a few things, but I think the one you have has all the content there. And then if there's some links, I think we can reach out to Kim, and maybe there's some links we can get to some of the like deployment guides and things that are coming out. So we'll probably have to keep that updated as they release for shortly within the next few weeks.
Okay, that sounds great. So we'll include links to all of that in the forum thread that I put in the chat. You'll also, if I have it in time for tomorrow, you'll also get it in an email that will come to you from GoToWebinar, along with a link to the recording of today's presentation. And I think with that, you got 5 minutes left to get back for your day. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Sam. It was a pleasure. And Jared, I think I have a sneaky suspicion we'll have you back at CUGC again for another webinar in the future.
I look forward to it. I appreciate the community.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Take care.
You as well. Bye.